how is your energy level this morning? A lot of hands up in there. Shall we throw one around?
Yeah, I don't know. It's first we want again to focus you more on the center. So how about we get up and all get in the middle of the room?
Especially from the back of the room. Would you like to join your colleagues?
Or more on the sides? Let's move to the middle. Please, that
so nice.
side specifically.
Let's readjust. Let's come to the center.
I still see some that just would not do that.
They won't move. You'll have an energizer, so you need a pair anyway, so we really suggest you to come everyone together. Especially the back of the room. Please do come forward. I know you're comfortable there, but there are even more colleagues up here. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. While we're readjusting, how about we set our laptops and tablets and the programs of the day a bit down, we stand up, and we find a person closest next to you, so we need to make pairs.
Remember, it's all about crossovers. We're trying to do as many crossovers as possible.
Okay, does everyone have a pair?
Even Ragnar has a pair.
Everyone set? Okay, well, this is what is going to happen. First of all, you remember your own name, the one your mother gave you or father. Then you turn to the person that you're going to play with. You put your finger in there, and you have to draw the letters of your name, quite big letters. And the first one that pronounces their name with the finger drawing is the winner. And you just say your name and raise your hand up. So we're going to show it. Okay. Okay, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Leva!
Zana.
Yeah.
Okay, she's been doing it for years.
No.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, congrats. If you don't know each other yet, you can also formally introduce yourself now, because I doubt anyone can read that. Okay, let's sit down. We're good to go. Yes, before we start how's today's session? Again, a couple practical things for those who were not here yesterday. So one can follow us online in Presidency website and in radi.lv. Please use Twitter, hashtag crosscall as actively as possible. We got quite a few comments. Use it for questions as well.
Thank you so much. Yes, as you've noticed, we have different outfits today. You'll also notice Ragnar and Ernest, thanks to the Ministry of Culture and Taste Latvia. Zana is wearing a custom designed dress that really matches her microphone. It's
I'm working on that.
Keep on holding on to it. I'm wearing a Reinis Rotting's dress, and Amber from my grandmother. She's very happy to give it to me today. Ragnar and Ernest still have the One Wolf jeans. They're very cool. The Miasa t-shirt and another one from Taste Latvia t-shirt. So give it up for Taste Latvia and the custom outfits.
Speaking of which, first thing Ragnar told me this morning was, Zana, I've done many things in my life, but I haven't done one thing. And I was like, oh, this is getting too much information, too personal.
Intimate.
Yes, and I said, so what is it? He's like, I've never worn a t-shirt on the stage. So you will experience historical moment of Ragnar wearing a t-shirt on on the stage. But okay, I'm very happy to announce our first session on creative and cultural crossovers to urban and regional development, and I'm honored and pleased to ask on the stage Tom Fleming, really one of the leading consultants and experts in this question. He's a longtime friend of Baltics, have worked extensively with British councils and in all Baltic states and with the city and state governments here. So warm welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for that rousing wake-up call this morning. I think we all could have done with it, and most of all me, perhaps, because I think that it's a sort of perverse, a bit of humour from Ragnar to put me on first thing in the morning, because he probably knows that I'm not the world's best morning person either. So I think my job partly today is to try to get you all engaged, but also hopefully to get myself woken up and engaged as well, and shake myself into the mood for some good conversation. I also love the idea of wearing kind of locally designed clothes and fashion for this conference. I think that perhaps in the future you should ask that, or insist that the speakers also do the same, or at least have some kind of accessory. I just want to wear a t-shirt, basically. Yeah, I'm sick of all of this jacket wearing stuff. Okay, so it's a real honour and privilege to be here, and thank you for the invitation. It's years since I've been in Riga, actually, but I've been working in the Baltic states on and off for a long time. And I think if there's a part of Europe that has engaged more with the role of culture and development, the role of the creative industries in economic growth, the role of creativity as a means of engaging talent and as a means of repositioning cities, repositioning nations, then I don't know it. I think this part of Europe has been a leader and is not just adapting to change, but actually is driving change on an international level, and perhaps is under-recognised in that context. I've been asked to talk about cities, and I've kept the title that I was initially introduced to for this conference. In a sense, this isn't my title, but I thought it's a useful starting point for a discussion around the role of culture and creativity and the creative industries in city making, and of crossovers in that context. Because I think that it's at once affirmative, it's a positive title, but also it introduces some challenges, and some of the challenges that we face in policy making, in investment, and really in making the argument. Because explicit in this title is the assumption that culture-led investment and the creative industries, creativity, delivers outcomes, delivers positive outcomes, positive crossovers, positive spillover effects. And therefore, explicit in that is the challenge of instrumentalism, the challenge of cause and effect, the challenge of stating that this investment will lead to these kinds of positive outcomes, will make a change, will have a transformational impact. Another challenge in this title is something that we face across Europe and beyond, is around positioning culture and creativity as something that stands slightly apart from the rest of life, the rest of the economy, the rest of city making. And the balancing act that we have to perform in terms of exclaiming the exceptionalism of culture and the creativity, saying how important this is, saying the kinds of things that it can do to our economy, to our well-being, to our confidence, to our distinctiveness, all of those things, on the one hand, but also being able to say that this is something that's integrated, this is something that should be mainstreamed into everything we do. So if we instrumentalise, we're setting ourselves up to succeed, but also potentially to fail. And if we segment culture, creative industries, there's a challenge of separating it from the core things that we do, whether it's in planning our cities, whether it's in the way that we govern, the way that we develop our education sector, and all of those kinds of things. And through our work all over the world, what we're seeing is that balancing act being played out all over the place. Some places manage to deliver it, a lot of places don't. But critically, I think, and in this session about cities, it's perhaps at a city level where there's most opportunity to deliver. There's most opportunity for reform. And yesterday there was a lot of conversation around how you, for example, embed design-led thinking within governance structures, in policy making. how you cut across silos, all of those things, but also how you manage the relationship between an investment and an outcome. At a city level, there's most opportunity to do that, but it's also at a city level where you need most emphatically to develop relationships based on trust. It's where you need to build communities of shared endeavour, and therefore it's really important that the terms of reference are clear. It's really important that you develop a shared approach, and you develop a shared approach based on openness, based on I guess, almost a civic endeavour. Because if you don't do that, then the feedback, the callback from citizens, from your stakeholders, is much more prickly. National governments can stand apart to some extent until the elections. At a city level, you're meeting people on a day-to-day basis, so relationship building is critical in that environment. Now, first thing in the morning, I thought I'd give you a real challenge, give you a big, fat, horrible, text-laden quote to get you thinking, get you moving at the beginning of the day. But the most important thing really is at the beginning of this quote. Now, what we've seen, and what we continue to see all over the world, all over Europe, is to an extent a formulaic approach to the development of culture, the position of culture, and the wider approach towards the creative economy. This is a quote from a brilliant document which I just saw on the table at the back there, which Bern mentioned yesterday, for those of you who were here yesterday morning, which tries to explore the spillover effects of public investment in culture and the creative industries. And Bernd also mentioned a piece of work that we are the consultants to, which is focusing on an evidence-based approach to the spillover effects of public investment in culture and creative industries across Europe, and trying to make sense of what we know, or what we think we know, about the relationship between investment and the outcomes that it delivers across a whole range of different areas, from the economy through to personal development. The challenge that we see is that policymakers too often in our cities are picking up tools based on assumed good practice elsewhere without it being underpinned by evidence developed in a locality, and certainly without it being informed by a shared an engaged approach with the city, with the context, with the distinctive cultural context in which those policies are being developed. So in an abstract sense, there's nothing wrong with these individual tools, from repositioning our cultural sector through to developing incubator projects to a whole range of different things. That's all fine, but they need to be bespoke, they need to be embedded, and they need to be co-created with the sector. Otherwise, they're a forlorn pursuit. We also, though, need to think about why we're doing this. And even if we get to a mature conversation about crossovers, they're still driving the agenda in too many cities is an assumption that there's a problem to be solved, or that the culture or the creative industries kind of ride into town and deliver against a set of systemic, often long-term challenges that a city may face. And in a sense, we're all culpable of this agenda. We're all culpable of accepting the charm offensive almost that the narrative around culture and the creative industries has delivered over the last 20 years or more. The assumption, because the creative industries is a high-growth sector, because culture, of course, is a great thing, but also something that can deliver all kinds of other value, that it will fix things that are broken. The assumption that we can all raise our game and become attractive, enticing, tantalizing, invigorating, sticky even, places along the kind of story that the likes of Richard Florida will weave. The assumption that through doing that, through embracing the role of culture and creativity, we'll kind of grow on the attractiveness index. We'll get on the map, we'll get on the charts. The amount of cities we hear say we're doing this because we want to get on the map. What does that even mean? What we're failing to do is to attend to the very specific conditions in which culture develops and culture flourishes. We're failing to attend to the very distinctive assets that we have, whether they're our heritage assets, whether it's our talent, or whether it's the institutional landscape that connects those different things. And we're failing to attend to the distinctive geographies that we see across Europe and beyond. And often, I think, this is couched in a kind of rescue mission rhetoric about changing the economy and rebuilding the economy. Assumed within it is a notion of cities in crisis. Also, as we've come out of the downturn, assume within it is a kind of special pleading for the role of culture and the creative industries. And in some ways, the instrumentalism has increased as a consequence. Because if we don't do this, if we don't exclaim the importance of culture and creative industry, then there's a fear that it will actually disappear from the spreadsheets that are being developed in bureaucracies across our cities and across our governments, that culture will be written out of the script. So the argument gets more urgent. And we need to make sure that when we talk about crossovers, that we don't fall into those traps about urgency in the same way that we do about just investment in culture and creativity overall. And that we don't just see it as a tool for rescuing cities. We'd see it perhaps in a more nuanced and balanced and sophisticated way. For example, as a way of ensuring that our cities are more equal, our cities are more open, our cities are something that enables different communities to prosper. Because, let's face it as well, the creative industries as a sector is historically a sector that's benefited more those who have privileged access to resources, to contacts, to knowledge, and of course to finances. And it's not a sector that is inclusive of the greater talent pool that's out there. So we have an uneven creative industry sector. However, we also need to be more confident about the role that the creative and cultural sector can play in an upturn, in maximising the potential that growth allows, that growth introduces. We need to be more confident in positioning the sector as part of the success story rather than something that responds to the challenges, perhaps some of the sob stories of our cities. Because overall, our cities are doing quite well. Even the cities we think are on their knees are probably historically in a better position, or certainly some of them are in a better position than they were centuries ago, wealthier and healthier. And we need to develop an evidence base that shows that culture and a more diverse, balanced, productive, creative economy delivered through processes of crossovers, yes, but also through outcomes, through spillover effects, a healthier and wealthier economy overall. We also, though, need to be clear about the negative outcomes. Some of the processes, the challenging crossovers, the challenging spillover effects that we see in our cities. This is a tweet map of an area in London which is now being branded as Tech City, or Silicon Roundabout, for those of you who know London. For me, it's Old Street, Shoreditch, that kind of area, Hoxton. And it's been sort of post-branded in recent years as a real hub for tech companies. Great in terms of job creation. It's incredibly successful as a cluster. Perhaps some people have claimed that more jobs have been created in tech companies in this district than have been created in the financial services in the City of London just to the south of it over the last few years. But what's it doing in terms of the historically embedded arts and cultural sector that has been grafting away in that district for generations? Or does it increase and boost the property prices at the expense of people who've been living there in social housing for many years, who no longer can afford to live there and are being squeezed out by zealous property developers? There are negative outcomes in our cities. There are prickly, challenging crossover processes happening in our cities we need to get real with as well. So I suppose what I'm saying as an intro is that policymakers like a clear narrative. They often like to see cause and effect as well quite rapidly. They like to pull big levers. We're seeing this all over Europe now, where there's a positioning amongst different sectors to get investment, to get a seat around the table, to have influence. And the policy influence is often large bundles of actions around investment, around skills, around business support, which kind of just pull big levers, but actually don't deliver the kind of complex, enabling environment that's so critical in our cities for the creative sector to flourish and for the crossovers to have a sustainable impact over a long term that delivers value to different communities and is much more inclusive and productive as a consequence. Our cities, if they are to be enabling environments for culture and creativity to flourish, need to be built upon and supported through a complex myriad of smaller acts, fine-tuned, connected, through multiple agencies, not through a top-down approach, but through a bottom-up, collective approach to city making. We heard yesterday lots of discussions around, lots of language around ecosystems, ecologies, rather than economies. And in some ways that kind of provides a sort of shield in front of some of the more challenging systemic issues that we have, because it's a kind of cosy language. It's an affirmative way of talking around culture and the creative industries. But having said that, it also enables us perhaps to articulate the complex set of interdependencies that are at play in our cities, to articulate the way that investment in culture and investment in other areas that are connected to culture can deliver a whole range of crossover outcomes, which in turn deliver all sorts of other kinds of value. But it's very tricky to manage that process. It's very tricky to instructively say, this will lead to this, will lead to this. In some ways, it's about accepting almost the lack of power in being able to control the process, control the outcomes, but accepting also that if you don't do it, then you won't have the kinds of positive economic as well as social outcomes that we need if our economies are going to be balanced, diverse, inclusive, and all of those kinds of things. So we need to see culture and the creative industries not as something that stands alone, but something that is convergent with the wider process of city making, of city repositioning going forward. And it's not about saying, how do we manage and support our creative industries? I think we need to transcend that and think about how we apply creativity across the way that we plan and develop and ultimately co-design our cities. Nesta in the UK, the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts, talks a lot about creative jobs in non-creative sectors. I have a problem with the language there because I don't think that any sector can realistically prosper without an element of creativity at its heart, and therefore it can't be a non-creative sector. But I also accept that some are more creative than others, and that the people who are in the process of developing creative content or who are geared and motivated by creativity as a core discipline, they don't just work in the creative industries, and nor should they. They work in other sectors. But also, as we talked about at length yesterday, the creative industries deliver creative thinking, creative practice, creative value to other sectors, to lift the economic potential, to invigorate the innovation potential of other sectors. We need to think about our cities in the same way that we should think about our best companies, or the way that we should think about our best cultural organisations, as being enabling environments for all kinds of creative crossover to occur. And we need to cut down the barriers that stand in the way of that. And we need to open up the city as an opportunity landscape for all kinds of different kinds of process, all kinds of ways of thinking, seeing and doing. We need to develop creative literacies in the way that we plan and design our cities. In the UN Creative Economy report a couple of years ago, there's this notion around creative fluency or creative literacy in developing, in establishing local development pathways for the creative industries sector, for people to realise their potential, to, as they go through the education system, to recognise that they have a role to play in placemaking, which is exactly a part of the same thought process that invigorates them to think, I also potentially could set up a company in the creative industries, or I could develop a creative job. My craft, my design, my art could be the thing that sustains me. Cities need to develop the same kind of assumptions. So we need to move away from the notion of planning a city to the notion of curating a city. And if we're going to nurture an environment, a place where crossovers occur, we need to ensure that the city is the kind of place that enables creative people to be at the fore. Now, digital technology obviously is a real disruptor here, because some have assumed that denudes places of the kind of relevance that they historically had, that it means that we obviously are at once more global, that we're at once more connected to people all over the world, and that the local sort of falls away a little bit. But actually what we're seeing is that the way that digital has disrupted the economy and has disrupted place has required increasingly that we have place-based affiliations, that we connect locally, whether it's just for our own personal development, our personal sense of place, or whether it's to develop the kinds of transactions of scale that enable you to build businesses and business models and products and services that you can trade and connect with internationally. overall we're seeing in our cities, and city makers trying to respond to the way the nature of work is changing. The creative industries have been at the forefront of the fragmentation of the overall workforce towards the development of the freelance economy, the micro-economy. As a consequence, we're seeing a greater set of interdependencies between very small businesses, small players, having to share, having to trade ideas in kind as much as through monetary transactions. We also are seeing, as was mentioned quite a few times yesterday, the nature of play is changing. But also I think we're seeing a kind of convergence between work and play. Are you at work or are you on leisure time? Are you here to be a productive economic unit in a job, or are you here to have fun? And sometimes, of course, it's all of those things. Now, that raises challenges in terms of how you design for productive economic activities to happen in a city when people at the same time are there to hang out, to play, to connect, to be part of a community. We heard a little bit about the way the cultural practice is changing. And this is a real challenge for policymakers investing in culture, but I think it's particularly a challenge for cultural institutions and organisations that historically have had quite a firm notion of who their audiences are and how to engage with their audiences. But also, you can see the way that this kind of slide where you have this rather passive other sitting there, and it looks a little bit like this, except of course you're not really like this at all. You're all individuals with dynamic personalities. But there's an issue in the way that we have invested in our cultural organisations to deliver almost services, cultural services to our communities, to mollify them, but also to inspire them. Of course, digital and other things have disrupted that entirely, and now it's a conversation, but it's also beyond that in terms of co-production, co-creation being at the heart of the way cultural organisations position themselves. So cultural organisations, actually, and cultural venues, including bricks and mortar institutions, have got a critical role to play in the way that the city is changing. Now, we're in a bind here, because at an investment level in our cities, cultural policymakers are thinking, okay, well, we have these sunk costs, we have these buildings, we have these long-term investment commitments to these cultural organisations, which are often part of a portfolio, the jewels in the crown of our cultural landscape in our city, but they're not fit for purpose. Because if we want to develop a creative economy, or if we want to reach out to people on their own terms so they can co-create with us and not just receive our cultural content, then we need to change our terms of engagement with our cultural sector. We need to change our cultural organisations. We need to challenge them to open up, to diversify, to co-create with their audiences, to provide those kinds of messy, often almost third spaces or in-between spaces where creatives can come together to develop new kinds of ideas, new kinds of content that put the audience at the heart of the conversation. Cultural organisations are critical for the crossover potential of our cities, but they're not currently in a position to deliver on that, or very few are delivering as they could. Very few are delivering those interdisciplinary, convergent, collaborative cities that we need. What does it say, 10 minutes on this clock then? If it's... Ah, goodness me. This is why I'm not a morning person. Okay, the bell goes, therefore I shall whistle through. This is all about opening up our cities, ultimately. This is not around positioning our cities as this kind of planned for proposition. It's a planned with proposition. And it's only through engaging with communities, with our talent base most critically, on their terms, in spaces that are co-created with them rather than for them, that we can enable crossovers to happen. We see this through many, many examples, in the way that engagement is being mobilised, whether it's about upcycling cities, whether it's about opening up cultural infrastructure, whether it's about co-locating different uses in, what is a museum. This slide is a prompt, yeah? In the piece of work we're doing with colleagues such as Byrne from Meggiorin, with the Arts Council in England, we've been asked to model the spillover outcomes of investment in culture and the creative industries from across Europe. And just to go back to my initial point at the beginning of this presentation, what we're seeing, I think, is a lot of quite underdeveloped propositions based on more anecdote, too often based on anecdote rather than long-term evidence development. We're seeing an assumption in cities that the investment in culture and creative industries in and of itself is delivering all kinds of crossover effects and spillover outcomes. But this isn't something that is being effectively measured through deep, long-term, engaged evidence building, and it's certainly not something that is being co-created as an evidence base with the sector. In other words, a challenge for all of us in Europe and beyond is to move beyond what I call policy-based evidence-making toward evidence-based policy-making, where that evidence is something that is driven with the people that we're seeking to serve in our cities, through engagement, through staging the city as a conversation, and through perhaps a higher pursuit of mobilizing a sense of civic creativity, which is beyond culture, beyond the creative industries, to a wider embrace of creativity as a core fluency for our cities, a core terms of engagement for citizenship in our cities for the future. So on that note, I shall say thank you very much. Cheers.
We ran a bit over time, but we have opportunity for one question. Tom, you had so many ideas. I think we all have to brainstorm on that a bit more, but really one question we have time for. Ragnar is going to be able to throw the mic. Okay, if not, I think it was... do you think we've put a bit of a burden on the shoulders of creative industries in order for them to kind of save us from drowning? And what you talked about, the risk awareness of the people that are living in cities, because they don't want to see their resources being spent without any value, and they're not very prone to risk in their neighborhoods or maybe to some new values or some new ideas. So is it a natural way that we've come to the creative industries as a solution, or is it the other way around?
I really want to hold this, thank you. I fear that the creative industries is too often positioned as a quick fix, or to an extent as a panacea, because it's seen as successful in other cities. I think we need to get real that in most cities, the creative industries by itself is only ever going to be a relatively small sector. It's only in a small number of cities that it's a very big sector, where there's real agglomeration and economy of scale. This is the opportunity for crossovers, because in every city, the real opportunity for the creative industries is the disproportionate impact that it can have in delivering crossovers across the economy into other areas, to other sectors, but also into a kind of wider agenda around placemaking. So we're right to burden the sector with a responsibility, but we just need to be careful in terms of what that responsibility entails. And I think crossovers actually is a real opportunity to develop a new kind of terms of engagement for the sector.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Thank you, Tom, so much. When I mentioned to a colleague from Estonia the conference, she was like, and you're going to have even Tom Fleming, so use the time wisely and talk with him. So if you have the opportunity, please have a coffee with him and ask your questions. We're going to continue, and we're going to even go further on into a regional level, and we're going to go to France and the region of Nantes, the role of culture in building the city for tomorrow. Boris Meggiorin, sorry, my French is not that good. It's the biggest inner city redevelopment program or project together with Hamburg, and previously he has experience in the artistic intervention project Tilt. So Boris, please, the floor is yours. Round of applause. Yay.
So thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to the Latvian Presidency of the Council of the European Union. It's very good to be here today. My name is Boris. Meggiorin. I have a Russian name, Italian surname, and I come from Western France. So here is Riga, and here is Nantes. And I'm the head person for international development at the Agency for Redevelopment of the island of Nantes. There is a river island next to the city center in our city. And I came here yesterday by plane, and when it comes to flight travelers, I learned that there are two kinds of flight travelers to this kind of events. The ones having a direct flight and the ones having a connecting flight. And usually you can recognize the one having a connecting flight because they are more tired. And in my case, I always go through Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport, which is itself a venue for anthropological catalog. And on the, in Terminal 2F, where you have Air France connecting flights, in the back of the hall, you have like a cloud of smoke, and you hear a lot of noise, and there are people going to Marseille. And because they are chain smokers, and they have heavy jewelry and so on. And on the other side, you have like people going to Belgium. They are running like goldfish in a bowl. Where is my country? Do I still have a country? And back there you have the gate to Nantes, and it's pretty amazing that it's very quiet, and people like each other, and they talk to each other, and when you get to the plane, Air France, flight attendants, that usually are always so stressed, they are happy to go to Nantes, actually, and they say, I'm so happy to go to Nantes today, because it's nice, it's different, it's relaxed, and this is the spirit of the French West Atlantic. So I tell this because Nantes is the kind of city where nobody ever thought to want to go 30 years ago, because it was dirty, it was polluted, it was industrial, and a few years ago has been awarded as Green Capital of Europe. So how all this is possible? How can we make this kind of attractiveness in such a short time? So all begins with a kind of local Armageddon. In 1987, the shipyards, the shipbuilding facility of Nantes, they closed down, and that was actually really a local catastrophe, local economy. It was a bigger employer, leaving stranded so many employees, and at that point, French people did what they do best: a strike. So it was really a hard time for the city, and next to, in 1989, eventually, with the local election, Mr. Jean-Marc Ayrault was elected as mayor of Nantes. And the key point of the electoral campaign was, what is the role of the artist in the city? And this was the main differentiating element to the rest of the political local spectrum. So they went, and then they started to think, oh my God, we have all this wasteland in this river island next to the city center. What can we do with that? So they started to experiment. The first event was called Les Allumés, and it was a festival taking artists to this area of the city. And for the first time, people in Nantes, they saw that they could actually go to the city, go to the island, and there was this sense of belonging that things could happen. And then the team of Jean-Marc Ayrault started to travel around doing study visits. So study visits are good because they went to Essen, they went to Barcelona, and they went to Bilbao, and they saw things happening, and they dropped the idea of building a international business center, because that was very trendy at that point, because local people didn't like the ideas. It was not respectful of the heritage, of the values of the territory. So they decided, okay, we are going to work with culture, but we are going to do something different from what we saw in Bilbao. We don't need an avatar. We don't need an icon. We are going to build a city horizontally with the participation of the people. So they hired an architect called Alexander Shemetov, which was pretty innovative at that point. He had two good ideas, also other good ideas, but mainly two good ideas. The first good idea was that we need to redevelop the island, but not just a small portion of the island, which was the one in which shipyards used to be. We need to think holistic approach, so all the island and to reconnect the island to the city center, more bridges, a transportation system. And then the urban planning, we are going to do it in 3 layers. The first layer is we have some wasteland and we decide now what we are going to do now. And then we have some other wasteland, and in that area we decided now what to do, but we are not going to do it now. We can use those time frame and space for experimentation. So temporary use of neglected, abandoned spaces. Just for a while, we see if it works, and then we can do it in another area. And then we have like buffer areas. We have wastelands. We have areas in which we don't know yet what we are going to do, and we decided not to decide yet, because the city needs to adjust and breathe through the time. And this was the kind of working plan that they put together. In 2003, the local authority in Nantes Metropole created Samoa, which is the agency for which I work for, the redevelopment agency of the island of Nantes. And Samoa had the first mission, which was working with the hardware. We take buildings, warehouses, neglected. We just do the minimum that we need to do to put them back in the market. And that was the hardware. And then in 2011, they created the cluster, Quartier de la Création, the creative arts district, and the cluster was dedicated to work with the software. So we have those spaces, and we started to fill them with cultural and creative initiatives, which is not so new at that point, but in a moment in which everybody is doing this kind of work. There was such an intense work on the 4 dimensions of urban sustainability, especially on social sustainability, co-creation. So we work with soft planning, with mild urbanism. For example, we had a building called the Karting, and we didn't have so much money, and the rehabilitation of the Karting, former industrial area, it was 1 million euros, so we decided, okay, then we can rent it out for 10 years, and the revenues that we are going to get from the rent of small and medium-sized enterprises that we are going to host in that area is going to be equal to 1 million euros, so it's good. And then we created proximity services to give a feeling of space to this new area, which in France is not so usual. It's something that you can see more in Mediterranean cities. For example, in Barcelona, with urban planning, in which the idea is that from every point of the city, in 10 minutes walk, you can reach a public service of any kind. So we worked intensively with cross-innovation. At the cluster, we have 5 creative communities in which we matchmake the creative and artistic competencies to work with non-creative and non-creative sector. We have still 18% of jobs creation in the manufacturing services. We have composite materials and Airbus facility. So the need for higher competitiveness and sustainability and productivity is really, really important now, and we need artistic thinking, design thinking to improve these ideas. So we have further-looking program. We are going to transfer the hospital from the city center to the island of Nantes, and we are going to compensate that new volume with a new urban park on the island of Nantes. And we have a working group on the Park of the Future, in which we involve the citizenships, international experts, and local artists. And we have so many different initiatives going on in the same way, because we need to work with values, we need to create identification and engagement, because the attractiveness of the city is not just outwards, is first of all for the people that are living in the city. So when it comes to challenges, because of course I could stop here and say everything is good, everything is fine, but it's not the full truth. And truth is so powerful because it's the first thing that can enable change. So when it comes to challenges, we do need to work more, and this is why we work in European cooperation platforms, on social inclusion, on sustainability, and on the coherence of the overall project that is covering 40 years. Because we need to improve our skills on internationalization. Only 39% of people in Nantes are able to maintain a conversation in English. And we still have challenges when it comes to integration of minorities. And as we know today, if a minority feels well in the city, everybody feels well in the city. And all this is possible, of course, and it's good to remember it every day, because we have peace and we have democracy, so we really can create this sense of ownership, and everybody in Nantes can wake up in the morning and have the feeling that today I can make the difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boris. Do we have a question from audience? It's really, yeah, slow morning. Okay, then I'll have a question, rather about more global trends that I guess affect, not I guess, but that affect every city, and that is the trend of power law, kind of. Big cities get bigger, small cities get smaller. So is that one of the pressures that you're dealing with, the fact of, of losing, or potential of losing people because they move to the megacities or epicenters of activities?
This is not our case, actually, because Nantes is getting more and more people wanting to live in Nantes, coming especially from Paris, because it's just a couple of hours by fast train. And the key is very simple, because we all need a roof, and it's the real estate prices. We have such a big stock of land that we can use to keep real estate prices reasonable, that Nantes is going to be very attractive and sustainable for the next years. So I think that, yes, we can make a lot of intellectual thinking around it, but after all, the price of rent and the price of buying a house, it still makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is a great example of how these things can also happen in waves. So once the Paris reaches the peak, the territories or cities around it may start enjoying some of the benefits. Any question then? Yes.
My name is Bernd. I have a question regarding the digital hub in Nantes. As far as I know, besides Paris, Nantes is a very interesting place for the digital economy. Is this somehow related with this urban development? Is this parallel? Are there synergies between those worlds?
This is this is a new award that we got. It's the Nantes Tech Award. And it comes from the French Tech Platform, which is a new national platform for promotion of startups on technology, new technologies. And it goes well with the need for the city, which is today in the extreme periphery of Europe, to get connected. Of course, its geographic position is not always the most favorable. Since 2004, after the enlargement, there are new players coming over. But as much as the model of Richard Florida and Creative Class was elitist, we are seeing that also the smart city model is elitist. So we still need to work more on social inclusion and compensate this divide. Because the tendency is for like well-connected people to get more richer than not. I just put it simple, but this is how it works. Yeah, so it's really it's a good thing, but at the same time we don't have to forget that at the same time that we are helping out distribution through technology, we do also need to create good content. Otherwise, it's useless.
Thank you so much. Okay, Boris, thank you so much. We are proceeding, and yes. And as the next speaker, I would like to invite Rihards Funts, one of the most known designers in Latvia, to talk about an urban challenge, of course, a challenge of whole Europe and an aging population.
Hello, nice to see you all here, and I'm very glad to present best from Latvian design. And I will talk about one project which we made last year, and we made this project with big support of Riga 2014 culture capital. So this is a slide which are presenting my studio, and we have passion about human interaction with the environment, and we believe that this is very important thing, and this is when it starts. It starts when we are very small in the stomach of the mother, and during our lives we also want to feel the same. The interaction between our lives and the environment should be so comfortable and perfect. So, and this is how we have interaction between ourselves and society. So we are making industrial design, and so we get every time the feedback from the users, and so it's how we communicate with the world. And this project which I will present you, it has three parts. One is about called Vecumdiena. It's like elderly years of the human. Second one is Gymnasium. It's Vingrotava. It's about the health and well-being. And second one is about our childhood, and it's called Kids Room Zoom. And I will go quickly through all these three projects. So this project, All Days, it's created by my friend and designer Kristaps Grunsteins, and I think everybody in Europe knows that that in the year of 2060 there will be about 14% of elderly people since the age of 65 plus years. So and we present our version how the life at the 65 plus should be. And this is the way how we nowadays would think about our future. And this was something like concept design project just to ask people to think about these issues, what they will be after 40 years. And so it's very important to communicate with people with visuals. So we made also some research, and the main thing of the concept is to make Riga like a perfect city for elderly people. People for all the rest of Europe could come to Riga to get older and feel very comfortable. So one of the main things is to give the city center to the elderly people, because there is perfect infrastructure and nice buildings and nice views, and all these things are very important for elderlies. So we find the flat, and also it's very important to be very close to the society. So we're not making exhibition in exhibition hall, but we just rent a very comfortable and perfect flat, which also could be used for the elderly people to spend their days. So it's how it looks. We make some visuals, some posters. What will posters look on the streets after 40 years? And we also make some provocative photo shots and ask people to imagine how they will look after 40 years. It's like photo session when artists, one of the famous glass designers, make some replica about how he will get older. So we also think about the hobbies which people could do in the elderly days. So it like they will make some gardenings, and that will be very, very popular thing. And we create also some crazy and futuristic tools for the elderly people after 40 years. It's the industrial designed things what they should look like after 30 years. And we also make some infographics which are very easy to understand, that our pensions will be much higher. Also, we will have some great loyalty programs for the elderly people, discount cards, and also some planning tool system, how elderly people could plan their everyday life and their flats and environment around them. Yes, and the main thing is about that you saw in this elderly people project, all people which are coming are young people, youngsters, and we would like to ask them to think about their future, how they would like to live after 30 years. So that was the mission, just to provocate society in Riga to think about these issues, because we think that nobody's thinking really a lot about elderly people. So next one is gymnasium project. So we create the gymnastic tool system to put in the points in the city, in the districts where we have empty spaces, and just to make healthier society. So I'm watching also on the time, and I need to very quickly go through all slides because I get a lot. This is how I get this inspiration about this gymnasium. So I read the article in the newspaper about that the Latvia is in the last place with productivity in the working space. So I start to think about this issue, and I think that the main issue is the health of the citizens. So that's why they can't work in good productivity level. So I go through self-experience, public experience, and then we start to research possibilities how to increase this problem with productivity in workspace. And we found that the main thing is the well-being of the human and the health, that the people in Riga have a very bad health. So we find that we have quite a lot of empty spaces, so we can use these empty spaces. So empty spaces is empty for everyone, also for us, and so we as designer can use them as we want, and we need to make the proposal for the government, for the municipality, and we start this process. We would like to make these healthy points very small, very cost-effective, but in every district around in Riga, and it should be as close as possible for the people who live around in these areas. So to start to talk about, we create first prototypes to show the people our idea, and we would like to provoke a social process and to build community around the healthy lifestyle, and also to make some healthy processes in society. So it shows how we work. We need to just make prototype, act, to talk about our idea, and also in the same time we go deep, and we start with research, with techniques and technologies, how to make all our prototypes, and we need to talk about our idea with society and get the feedback. So we also work with design experience. We are talking with people and saying what is good from the healthy lifestyle and from our gymnastic tools. And people are very open for that, because they all the times people are looking for something new, and they want to test and try some new things. So people are quite open for our project. And it also goes together with healthy lifestyle. It's more like community, and we are talking about healthy food and healthy living. So it's like benefits. Its main thing is well-being, and so with this project we would like to increase productivity in the workspace, and also higher productivity. So and this is a picture from the first gymnasium, which is located in one of the districts in Riga, and it became we opened in before 1 year, and now it's become like a live space, and there's coming artists and making photo shots, and also we make some competitions there. So and this will be very quick. It's the last project. It's about children's, because it's very important, important also for the environment for the children's, and it's maybe more important than for the adults, because one of the main things is that the design for the children's, it's not just scaled design for the adults, and it's very important to work with all senses when you work with design for the children's. And there's some difference between how we feel the environment for the adult environment and separated, and for the child he sees the environment like whole thing. It's the main things when you're designing things that you should know. And we make the very big event. It's called Kids Room Zoom. There was about 36 companies from all around the Europe, and they all designers are focused on the design for the children's. So we also ran the very big and 200 meters flat, and it was full with design for the children's. And this is how looks regular exhibitions, and this is how looks our exhibition. It's all people are very welcome to involved to try our designs and designs from other companies, and to get in touch. So it's how we could see what's really important for the users. So it's regular exhibition, and this is our exhibition. This is how it looks in the exhibition halls, and this is how it looks in our project. And it's the same. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rihards. Unfortunately, we don't have any time for questions, but as we have approached the coffee break, someone can come up to you and ask. I pass the Vingrotava every day on my house, and Sakanaga is a very remote and quite poor district, so I think they've done a magical job in renewing the region and giving people something to do that's healthy and worthwhile. So good job on that. We have a 20-minute coffee break. We have a very special surprise for you in the exhibition hall Jura. You've noticed and been there probably. It's in the atrium to the left. We have musicians that are going to energize you up, and then we're going to return at 10 past 11 for the next session. Thank you.